Hello everyone! A year or almost 2 years ago, I shared a series of 15 episodes about the history of perfume. But today I will make it easier for you, because I'm going to tell you in only 2 videos of 15-20 minutes the history of perfume since its beginnings until the 18th century. 5,000 years of history. And this in Mesopotamia, where the roots of perfumery are, current Iraq and part of Iran, Turkey, Syria, Cyprus, Egypt and Kuwait. And this in Cyprus, where the first perfume factory was found, dated in 1850 before Christ, 3,900 years ago. Ingredients as anise, pine, oak moss, bergamot, lanthanum, almond, lavender, coriander, basil and parsley were already used. But what really distinguished the Cyprus perfumes was the quality of their olive oil used as a base. The area between the Tigris and the Euphrates, cradle of Sumer, Assyria and the Babylonian empires, was the center of a vibrant trade of oils, ointments and perfumes. And is here where the first perfumer of humanity lived, 3,250 years ago. And she was a woman. Her name, Taputi Melatekalim. The cuneiform tablets tell that the first perfumers were actually women and created perfumes with combinations of flowers like rose, plants like papyrus, spices, woods like pine, cedar and sandalwood, resins like myrrh and balsams. However, perfumes now at the time were used only for ritual and medicinal purposes. At the same time, 4,000 years ago, something extraordinary was happening quite far away from Mesopotamia, in the island of Crete, in Greece, where the Minoan civilization was flourishing. With the beautiful Knossos Palace as a neuralgic center, they also developed an intense perfume activity, using materials like camphor, bay, sage, lavender, coriander, cumin, saffron, verbena, rosemary, pine, myrtle, fig, anise, carnation, beeswax, honey, resins, olive oil, and many more. But particularly iris oil, one of the most precious and expensive materials then and still today in the perfume industry. Some vessels, bottles for us, were decorated with small iris flowers, which could indicate that contained iris oil in particular, like kind of Minoan label. The vessels were beautiful, very elegant, made in diverse stones as marble, limestone, basalt, rock crystal, serpentine, obsidian and alabaster, and were sculpted in such a perfect way that the walls were fine and delicate but still resistant. And an important fact, the Minoans used already the perfume as an accessory of beauty, pleasure and luxury, as we can see in the frescoes like the Parisian or the Prince of the Lilies in the Knossos Palace. Okay, now I need to do another giant geographical jump because I must mention India. In India, even before Mesopotamia and Crete, as far as about 3,300 before Christ, meaning more than 5,000 years ago, they were already making perfumes, the famous itars or attars. And, more important, using an early type of distillation. Yes, much earlier than the Arabs. All started in Kanauj, the Indian version of the French Guas. This village was specialized in mainly 6 perfumes, one of them evoking the rain, the smell of the rain. Note, much later known with the name of, can you guess? Yeah, petrichor, from the Greek petra, rock, and ichor, tears of gods. Is here in Kanauj, where was found a clay distillation equipment today on display in a museum in Lahore, Pakistan. Now it's time to go to Egypt. And after the Minoan civilization disappeared, Egypt knew one of its more splendorous periods, the New Empire, where the woman pharaoh Hatshepsut, during the 15th century before Christ, was so in love with the frankincense smell that she ordered to bring hundreds and hundreds of plants from the Punt, currently Somalia, to grow them close to her funerary temple, Deir el-Bahari, despite it seems not to have succeeded. The incense in these times was used to aromatize everything, temples, tombs and even the streets, During the banquets, flowers and perfumes were spread everywhere, on the tables, on the floors, and on the head of the guests. Yeah, at the guest arrival, a scented ball or cone was placed on their heads. Yeah, it's during the Hatshepsut reign where the famous wax cones started to be used profusely. This ornament contained solid perfumes, but with the Egyptian heat, this past was slowly melting, allowing the fragrance to be smelled during long hours, but staining the clothes with a not nice brownish color. Okay, the priests used to wear 3 different types of perfumes during the day. So, do you think that wear different perfumes during one day is too much? Nah, this is old. And as in Crete, in Egypt, perfumes began to have also a pleasure and seduction connotation. We can see it clearly in the erotic papyrus of Turin, created during the last dynasty of the New Empire, which represents scenes of a brothel with many references to the application of perfume oils. From this period is the oldest known perfume recipe in Egypt, the carpet, called Kithi by the Greeks. And apparently it was composed of around 16 ingredients like animal fat, vegetal oils, frankincense, myrrh, roots, saffron, cinnamon, mint, cardamom, wine, coriander, calamus, honey, raisins, mimosa, turpentine, and wild fruits, among others. The exact formula was a secret and changed from temple to temple, but thanks to remains in perfume bottles, the reconstruction of something similar was possible, and we can smell it today in the Perfumes Archive or Osmothèque in Versailles. The perfumer position was very appreciated, and existed a hierarchical distribution of roles, not very different of our master training system. The master perfumer, an honor position, was known as the Blue Lotus Processor, and many of them, being women, were buried in the Valley of the Queens, known at the time as Daset Neferu, which means the place of beauty. Regarding techniques, the Egyptian knew already some of the most important for the perfume manufacture, as the enfleurage, the maceration in oil, or the extraction by pressure. However, they didn't know the distillation. For another upgrade in perfume, we have to go 2,500 years ago to the Persian Empire, current Iran and part of Egypt, Turkey, Pakistan and Afghanistan, where Cyrus II and Darius I, around 550 before Christ, were big enthusiasts of perfume and used a bespoke and signature fragrance, as we would say today. They even used perfumes to go to the battlefield. And history says that Alexander the Great took one of the perfumes chest of a Persian king who had run away from the battlefield. And, according with the urban legend, this is how Alexander became the first Greek to wear perfume on a daily basis. Regarding bottles, while the clay used in Cyprus as a container was too porous and heavy, now new bottles made of painted glass were ideal for the perfume preservation, because it's not too porous and block the sunlight with the paint, but it was a bit fragile. So they started to make bottles of precious metals, but with one disadvantage. Can you guess? The price. So finally the alabaster was the most used material for the bottles. Not porous, not fragile, not expensive. Let's go to Greece. With Alexander, the perfumes in the Greek Empire of Macedonia had great relevance and experienced many innovations. We are now in the 4th century before Christ, still 2,500 years ago, and with the empire expansion, the trading routes allowed the introduction of exotic materials, ingredients from Asia, Arabia and Persia. Sandalwood, incense, patchouli, jasmine, myrrh, cinnamon, amber, and something totally new for the current European area, extracts of animal origin, seaweed, musk and ambergris. Alexander loved fragrances. The sources comment that he used to smell intoxicating, leaving a delicious trail, a good sillage, we would say today. One of his favorite smells was the saffron, and also he used to take hot baths with aromatic species for healing and aphrodisiac qualities. The beginnings of aromatherapy? For sure. The sources talk about the effects of perfumes over the people's mood and thoughts, discussing the relationship between smells and emotions. The Greek also were the first in elaborate something very new at the moment, liquid perfume, a great innovation to its old form of oils and ointments, despite they didn't know the alcohol nor the distillation technique yet. A few centuries later, with the charismatic Cleopatra, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, the perfume reached an importance of unusual proportions. And we will see many innovations. The 1st century before Christ, Greeks and Egyptians widely wore perfume, and it became an object of seduction, beauty and pleasure, more than ever, taking part of the daily life, at least for the high society. In Rome, Augustus organized the reurbanization of Rome, dividing it in neighborhoods where the different labor unions, artisans and traders congregated, like tanners, bakers and, of course, perfumers. Was the Vicus Unguentarium where the perfumers were. And here they had the first perfume shops 2000 years ago. The first perfumers' labor union, the Unguentari, lived here and manufactured 3 types of perfumes: solid, liquid and powder. The designs of the bottles in glass were really beautiful and very assorted. Meanwhile, in Egypt we have, of course, Cleopatra. There are so many stories about Cleopatra's use of perfume, but the truth is that most of them remain in the speculation field, as we have only few direct proof, written proof of their existence. For example, it's being said that the queen ordered to spread her ship's sails with aromatic oil of blue lotus, so the smell was perceived by the people gathered around the Nile to see her pass through, but especially, and more important for her, by Mark Antony before she arrived to the port. Nowadays there are many that, like Cleopatra, want their best mode perfumes to be smelled before arrival, right? In Cleopatra's life, before Mark Antony, was Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar used to cover his body with telinum, probably for his romantic encounters with the queen. In the Edfu temple in Egypt is documented a perfume factory or laboratory dated in the 3rd century before Christ. One of the rooms for the manufacture of perfumes and oils shows a whole wall with hieroglyphs describing with a detail some of the perfumes recipes manufactured here, like the Mendesian and the Metopium. This room at Edfu temple used to remain as dark as possible because it was here where the perfumes were left in maceration during 6 months. As you can see, things didn't change too much. They just had more time. And now let's go back to Rome 2000 years ago, the beginning of our era, times of Nero. The perfume and also balms, ointments, oils reached an extreme sophistication and extravagance, and their quality started to differentiate lower and upper classes, depending on the price of the ingredients, of course. The patchouli, recently introduced from India, and other materials like calamus or cinnamon were ridiculously expensive, according to Pliny the Elder. In his book, he discusses the quality and prices of different materials and also the bottles, and he says that the bottles were an essential part of the price, just like today. Romans used to create legendary stories about the perfume already 2000 years ago, with the only aim of increasing the prices. Let's say an incipient marketing. For example, the cinnamon gathered in Ethiopia. It was said that to gather it, it was necessary to climb inaccessible peaks protected by phoenix nests. Pliny clearly mentioned that it was just a trick to increase the price. In these times, perfumers and their creations also started to become recognized individually, Cosmos, the most famous, creator, for instance, of the perfume Foliatum, made of calamus, myrrh, and other ingredients, very expensive, is mentioned in many sources. As you can see, Roman Empire was splendorous for perfumery. But with the Roman Empire's fall and the emergence of the Christendom, which banned the use of perfume as a beauty and sensual product, it fell into disuse in Europe. So, allow me to tell you briefly what was happening in China at the time, 2000 years ago. In ancient China, the use of aromatic products goes 6,500 years ago, but they had mainly medicinal and ritual purpose, as in Mesopotamia. However, from about the beginning of the era, 2000 years ago, this changed and they masterized the use of aromatic products. During the Imperial China, the use of fragrances were part of a daily ritual because for them, the use of aromatic products elevated the quality of life, calmed the mind and the spirit, and purified the space. All the fragrances were medicine for the Chinese. And they had classifications depending on the mental state they produced. Quiet, confined, luxuriant, beautiful, refined, and noble. Again, we see how old aromatherapy is. China had curious particularities regarding perfumes, like the scented ink, elevating an utilitarian element to the category of art and scented product. They also had crafted exquisite silverwork spheres, where were added inside some incense, herbs, and spices. And they had also the famous scented bags with aromatic herbs inside. Meanwhile, in the rest of the world were no distinction between genders. In ancient China, feminine and masculine scents were specific, unless the incense that was for everybody. As I told you, in Europe there's a dark times for perfumes. And to keep talking about the history and innovations in the perfume world, we have to jump many centuries forward to the 8th or 9th century and the Arab world, as they were who introduced the technique that changed the world of perfumery forever. You know which one. So let's stop here. I will do another video next week telling you all the history and the innovations in perfumery from the 8th century until the 18th century, okay? But if you want to know more and to go further, go to my series of 15 videos where I talk about every single period in depth, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next week.